Hey guys, Shaking the Main, Debut.com with a Debut.com forecast update. This forecast update effective around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on March 14th, 2019. And okay, here we go into the real-time phase of our last couple of updates on Debut.com about 9 to 10 days ago on this possible surf alert that was setting up for Puerto Rico. And it's a developing gale on the backside of Bermuda. We've got Florida over here towards your left, the Outer Banks here in the middle. Bermuda is located right in here, and here's this developing gale now in real time. This is today's visible satellite imagery. We'll put that into motion for you here in the satellite loop, and again, Bermuda is located right in here, and here's this developing gale. Now, this was a system that we detailed back on March 5th, which our first post on Debut.com, and then we did an update over on March 7th, and we always like to go back and look to see what we said or what the models were showing at that time versus what's going to verify in real time. There's an old saying, guys, that nothing in weather is absolute until it happens in real time. And I want to point something out here in this post on March 5th. Now keep in mind, guys, today's the 14th. This is 9 days ago. And recently we had posted an image. It was a 9-day, 10-day Euro showing a possible hurricane force low off the northeast Florida coast or the southeast coast. And all of a sudden we start getting accused of hype. So first of all, we have no sponsors. Everything that we do, all the information that we put out for free for you. Okay? We're not in it for the money. We're in it for the love of weather. So if you go back to this post on March 5th, we'll read a little bit for you. It says, possible surf alert setting up. Please do not take this post as the gospel. Don't want to get accused of hype. All winter long, models have not been very good in run-to-run consistency past the 7-day mark. We hear a lot from our followers that we are good at picking out patterns 10 days out. Sometimes we are only as good as the models are unless we can actually see it coming together in the satellite imagery. And so if we go back and look to see what the models were showing us back on March 5th, this is not going to verify. Well, we know that. It's always one run of more to come, meaning that the models are going to change up every time. It's the idea that the models are presenting to us that give us the idea of what to look for. And again, nothing in weather is absolute until it happens in real time. So with that said, this is the latest sea height analysis out of NOAA's Ocean Prediction Center, and seas currently associated with the gale right in here to your right is running about 12 to 14 feet. When we first did our post back on March 5th, if the model had verified then, it would look like seas were going to increase to excess 20, maybe 25 feet in a solid northerly swell. The models had since backed off since then, and but we switch you over to the Ocean Prediction Center 48-hour surface forecast, and this area of low pressure is going to drop to the south. You see the little red arrow here with the X here, 1014 millibar gale in about 48 hours dropping south. Here's Puerto Rico down here in the bottom portion of your screen. Not sure if you can see our cursor or not, but then let's switch you over to the 96-hour swell forecast. And we'll do this a little bit backwards right here. So this gale is going to produce some 12 to 13 second periods. Early on, they were showing 15 to 18 second periods back on March 5th and March 7th. So that shows you the difference between what we originally posted and what looks to verify. Here's the 72-hour swell forecast out of the National Hurricane Center's Tropical Atlantic Forecast Branch, and you'll see that this little line here, or patch of green that extends east of Florida, north of Puerto Rico, and then out here into the main development region of the Atlantic. This is first pulse swell from that gale when it's cranking up. And then once it cranks up and reaches peak intensity in here comes this secondary swell that's up in here towards the top of your screen in those 12 to 13 second periods. So that's what we have for this system. Our attention then will turn to what's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico in about 4 to 5 days. Going to switch you over to the latest 72-hour surface forecast out of the National Hurricane Center. And what we have here is the tail end of the front in the Bay of Campeche, and that's coming from that low that spun up into the mid-U.S. as a Great Plains blizzard yesterday. So we've got the tail end of the front, 72 hours down here in the Bay of Campeche, but I want you to also take note down in here off of Costa Rica, in here south of Cuba, Jamaica, and there's an area of low pressure that's attached with an open wave right here. And during hurricane season, this pattern is known to produce tropical cyclones. And it's a pattern that we call round the corner, and that's where an area of spin develops in here off Costa Rica. It typically takes a tropical wave, a westward moving tropical wave. So imagine if this was a tropical wave, a westward moving tropical wave to kick this area of low pressure out, and then it gets up in here towards the Gulf of Honduras, and then once it's into the Gulf of Honduras, it can either go out to the East Pacific or into the Bay of Campeche or up through here and then off towards the right if a front comes in and sweeps it out across Florida. Now, the Gulf of Honduras is the birthplace of many of hurricane. It's a favorable area, and so we're already starting to see tropical signals show up here in the Western Caribbean. Now, the other thing, we are 62 days away, or approaching the 60-day mark for May 15th. And May 15th is the official start date for the Eastern Pacific tropical cyclone season. So, although the Atlantic season doesn't start till June 1st, if you go back to 2012, you'll see a slight trend in early seasonal development. These years included I think it was Hurricane Alex in January of 2016. I may have my dates wrong. There was another tropical storm in April. I can't remember what the name was. And there's been at least 5 May tropical storms that have developed in the last 7 years in the month of May. So we're not very far away from the beginning of the tropical cyclone season. And tropical cyclone season always starts in here in the Western Caribbean or off the Florida coast. Okay, going to switch you over to the 06Z run of the GFS. Keep in mind what we've talked about in the previous start of this video about models past 7 days. And so here is the 06 GFS. This is one run. The European is showing a little bit something different, but here comes possible surf alert setting up for the Florida East Coast and up in here towards the Outer Banks. So I'm going to advance the model for you, and as you can see, the front starts to dip down into the Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche here in about 24 hours. And so as we progress through the weekend, you'll see how precipitation starts to develop over here in the Bay of Campeche and then over towards Florida on Sunday. And so possible heavy rain setting up for the state as this system tries to come together. Now, as we move into Monday, which is the beginning of next week, you'll notice how the precipitation becomes more concentrated over in the Bay of Campeche, and that's indicative of the low pressure trying to get itself or get its act together. And then as we get into Tuesday, you'll notice how it starts to move towards the South Florida coast. Now, keep in mind, guys, I don't know if you saw our post on the buoys. We are watching the buoys as far as temperatures are concerned, and the the East Gulf buoy, 210 nautical miles west of Naples, Florida, has a sea surface temperature of about 80 degrees. And sometimes if that spin can find the right little warm spot, it can put up some more extra moisture in the air, help tighten up the gradient, and then all of a sudden we get into a stronger onshore flow. If you remember back in February, guys, we had that area of low pressure that moved out of the Gulf of Mexico over South Florida, and that was a system that intensified more than anticipated east of Florida that set South Beach on fire. So again, going back to nothing in weather is absolute until it happens in real time. This is what we're going to be watching for as we get into next week. This image is for Tuesday, just inside 5 days, and inside 5 days, model confidence begins to increase. I'll advance the model for you a little bit more. You'll see that the low pressure now exits the Florida coast and now becomes northeast of the central Bahamas, and that's going to start to kick off a strong onshore flow, a northeaster type condition. And then as we get into day 7, which is 168, you'll see that that first area of low pressure jettison off towards the northeast. Well, this run of the GFS now wants to try and develop a secondary low southeast of the Outer Banks. And this is going into day 8, day 9, and day 10. You'll see that the low starts to move off, but if we back it up here, this is strong northeast winds with northeast fetching here, and this would get some swell going in here towards South Florida. Now, mind you, the European model is showing a stronger onshore flow here through South Florida. 25 to 30 knots may be coming, maybe even 35 knots. So still some uncertainty, guys, outside of that 7-day window. That's all we got for you for now. Stay tuned for the updates. We will be going into the weekend on this system, but definitely looks like some rainy periods ahead. Definitely seeing some tropical signals showing up in the Atlantic. Thanks for following.